We're all the same, yet different. What a fucking bunch of nonsense. It's Darren here with a thought. We're all the same, but we're all different. You know, a lot of these aphoristic expressions are cute, and they're great, and they're useful because they prompt thinking. And often they are dependent on like a mutually arising polarity. Like you can't understand what up means unless you understand what down means. The truth in that statement is how we are all alike is that we're all human. Now, there are many people who will disagree with that, and we're seeing more, and unfortunately more of that in the world. People don't see the humanity of every single person. They see whether they're legal or illegal. They see them as belonging or having snuck in to their country. How dare they? And yet, understand history and colonialism, something, of course, which many governments are also trying to suppress because they don't want people to know that the people who own, aka politicians, or big corporations, the country, took over the land hundreds of years ago. Yeah, the individuals today are not responsible for the gross injustices of the past, but to ignore it, well, you know where this goes. In my work with clients, in coaching clients, my role is to help them find more freedom. That's it. Freedom. And freedom in this sense means you can be yourself. You can pursue your dream. You can find the ways that you most uniquely can make a difference in the world or create your thing. You can find your way in which you master yourself, your own leadership, and be alive and visible in a way that others are inspired by what it is you're doing to make a difference. All of your foibles, mistakes, concerns, shame, guilt, skills, strengths, passions, and vision, all that stuff all mixed together in one big kettle of what the fuck. But getting clarity about all the individual ingredients that are in that kettle are what help you to determine what freedom means for you. So freedom means, and there's some really good, I am crossing the path again, don't mind me. There's some really good explanation about what freedom means in this sense. Positive freedom or negative freedom. Positive freedom means you're working towards something that makes things better for yourself and everyone else. And a negative freedom means you are doing something that is encroaching on someone else's freedom to achieve that positive freedom. One of the core freedoms that I believe need to be upheld is the freedom of the individual. But the freedom of the individual does not extend to the expense of another individual, right? So the more that a government or a state tries to suppress individual thought, knowing history, freedom of expression in what they say, freedom of gender and sexual identity, or trying to control how people can identify themselves, you just create more resistance. That is negative freedom. But there are limits, right? There are limits in all kinds of freedom. There are consequences, which is another word for the limits. If you push too hard against someone else's freedom, for society to function, for a group of people to function, There have to be some limits or some controls or some no, don't do that, because if you want to have this, you can't expect someone not to have that. And it's not always going to seem fair, but it comes down to, is it just in a way that serves the greater positive freedom? Yeah, this is getting a little bit, difficult in some way to understand. Like, where are you going, Darren? Where, like, you're crossing the path, there's a fight coming. Metaphorically, in the moment, where are you going with all this, Darren? The challenge I think I'm seeing with a lot of people is they are creating their own negative freedom by not speaking up, by not taking the lead, by not fully embracing their queerness. Yes, I understand. We have to be safe. But we are coming into a time right now where it is more important than ever not to create more polarization, but to be visible. Not to make ourselves targets, but to be visible in the sense of inspiring others to recognize that this should be, and is, in my opinion, an inalienable right to have the positive freedom to be who I am, to express myself as who I am, because that doesn't hurt anyone else. If someone holds onto an ideology, which is a way of thinking, an ideology is a way of thinking. Rigid, fundamentalist religious beliefs are a way of thinking. If in that belief you think that me being a faggot or queer or gay harms you, your thinking is wrong. And this is really important, because who we are in many levels, isn't much of a thought, right? When we're completely free, we don't think too much about who we're being. We just show up. We are. We live. We express ourselves as easily and without any conscious thought that we wouldn't give to breathing. So it's like I'm not paying attention to inhale, exhale every single breath of my life. Just like I'm not paying attention every single moment of my life to who I am as a queer person. Because sometimes who I am as a queer person has no meaning at all. Because I'm walking my dog, or I'm eating my lunch, or I'm writing in my journal. And maybe might be writing about those things, but those are thoughts, those are reflections. I think is again thinking. And the more that the larger forces that are afraid of positive freedom try to restrict freedom and create more negative freedoms, or limit the positive freedoms to A, only those in power, or B, only those who ascribe to those who are in power and agree to the rules and regulations. The more unhappy people become. Because if you can't be who you are, you can't be creative. And if you can't be who you are, you can't make a difference. And as much as many people will try to seek control over uniqueness and difference, even if that succeeds for a short period of time, the human spirit will start to die, for lack of a better word. One's humanity will start to die. And those who don't have the individual strength, and this is not a judgment, they might actually physically die because they just don't have the capacity, and that is one of the saddest things. But those that do have the strength will fight. And history has shown how these kinds of ideological regimes, these kind of ideological thought systems that try to suppress or try to design and describe and define who is human, who is not, they eventually get completely overthrown through some sort of violent revolt, or they implode because everybody who's at the top who has power is then, there are other people that want to have that power, and there's a power struggle and things just fall apart. Or there are more subversive ways that individuals sort of at the bottom of the pyramid start to weaken the foundations and help dissolve the foundations, and it sinks down. So there's never one way, but it's just really important as a message that I want to share with you here. A bit of a ramble, and I apologize for that. It's just something I had in my mind that I wanted to share. Your leadership depends on your freedom. Your creativity depends on your freedom. Your peace of mind depends on your freedom. And your freedom depends on the freedom of others. So please, I invite you to consider the kind of freedoms you want for yourself in this world, and whether they are positive freedoms or whether you are seeking to get what you want that creates negative freedoms and ultimately ends up harming more people than what might have been your intention.